welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. Something different today. I'm actually going to be talking about music. Something I haven't actually ever spoken about on the channel. And this is actually a heavy metal tag that was created way back in 2016 by Wicked Ice Queen. But I saw a channel called Horrormetal do it quite recently. I thought, do you know what? Fancy a bit of a change. Let's talk about something else. And so I decided to do that. So I will leave a link to both the originator of the tag and Horrormetal's channel in the description. So please go check them out. And there's 10 questions, and I feel like my answers may be somewhat contrarian to, I would say, the majority of answers. Well, some answers anyway. But we'll talk about it as we go along. And I've got them written on my phone, so you're just going to have to bear with me while I kind of look down. So, how old were you when you were first introduced to metal? I would say it was 1988 with the introduction of the Guns N' Roses Appetite of Destruction that came out in the UK then. Now, you might not consider that metal if you're like more of a heavier metal type, but to me, heavy metal is like the umbrella kind of like term, and then within that you've got various different kind of subcategories. At least that's how I kind of see it. But I did get into a little bit heavier stuff. But my introduction was 88. I was about 14 at the time, and I had never been into music before. I'd never was any interested in music. I'd bought the Queen Flash 7-inch single when that came out, but that was because I liked the film rather than necessarily the actual the music. So with 1988, me and my friends kind of got into Guns N' Roses, and this was the kind of the start then to get into various other bands. Now I will point out, in the UK in 1988 there was 4 TV channels. There was no heavy metal programming. You know, the only time you ever really heard it was on the radio and things like that, but there was very little play back then. Obviously this was before the internet, so getting to know new stuff was actually quite difficult, because most of these bands come from America and they got very little traction when you were a kid, you know, 14-year-old in the UK. So yeah, but it was 1988, and Guns N' Roses was the kind of the first band that kind of like sparked my interest into rock / kind of metal music. What was your first metal concert? I can't remember specifically, to be honest with you, and here's where the contrarian stuff might start. I was never a huge fan of going to live gigs. I much preferred listening to the recorded albums of metal music, because to me, live music never seemed as good. Now, that I know that's going to be a contrarian to most people, but to me, I preferred the more clean, professional sounding tracks that you got on records, rather than the kind of like the live experience where I never thought the music sounded as good. That's just my opinion. I know that's not the majority of kind of you know, people's. I didn't go to loads of gigs, so I was never that fussed about seeing bands live. But the earliest gig that I remember going to was White Zombie in the early 90s, who played Brixton Academy. And I may have seen a band earlier that I don't actually remember, but this is my first memory, at least, that I can think of now. I really got into kind of White Zombie, and they were playing with some friends, and I was the kind of the person who was into it more than anyone else. And that's the earliest group I remember seeing that was a professional group, if that makes sense. What was the best metal concert that I've been to? I went to Metallica Escape from the Studio 1995, which replaced the Donington Monsters of Rock Festival, and that had a great lineup. Loads of bands that I was kind of into. Obviously Metallica, White Zombie were there, Warrior Soul, Skid Row. There was a whole host of stuff, of bands that I was interested in. And the only one who I wasn't overly fussed with was Therapy, who were the kind of like the second billing, who were like a British band who seem to have just dropped off the radar nowadays. If I could spend a day with one metal musician, who would it be? Don't care, is the honest answer. Again, probably a little bit of a contrarian. I have no real interest in meeting celebrities. I just don't. I don't get starstruck. And it's the same thing with movies, because obviously now I do movie stuff. I just don't care. I have no real desire to meet people or to that sort of thing. So I like the products. I'm not fussed with meeting people or kind of stuff like that. But if I have to answer the question, I would say Gigi from Phantom Blue, because she was a hot metal babe or a hot rock babe. So why wouldn't I spend the day with her? That's pretty much would be my answer. But I really am not that fussed about the kind of. I like the product, be it music at this point or with films nowadays. I'm not like a person who's that fussed about celebrities and things like that. I really couldn't care. I don't like really getting stuff signed. I think it defaces the items, things like that. And I just like to consume the product, be it music or films and stuff. But I have no fuss. I'm not fussed about meeting the people behind it. I know, and this is why I don't do very, very many interviews. Do I think core is metal? I don't even know what core is. I'm assuming that's some type of modern spin-off. So I would say yes. I'm not familiar, to be honest with you. I kind of like the same music that I was listening to 20 years ago. I don't really listen to a lot of modern stuff, to be honest with you. But, you know, if it's kind of like new metal or whatever, yeah, I mean, I would say, like I've said, I personally feel like the word metal is an umbrella term that that covers many subgenres of metal, from, you know, rock music, well, kind of hard rock music, up to kind of like death and black metal and everything in between, really. So they're all different flavours of the kind of the same product, if you ask me. So even though I'm not familiar with core metal, I just don't listen to modern stuff, if I'm honest. Then I would, but if it is what I think it is, then probably I would say yes, it's answer to that question. Who is your favourite metal band? So overall, I would say White Zombie, who was Rob Zombie's original band. I absolutely loved that band. Fantastic music that was somewhat kind of unique sounding. I felt I don't like Rob Zombie's solo stuff though, to be honest. I only liked him in White Zombie. But if we were talking more traditional kind of metal, I would actually say Manowar. That was kind of my level, if that makes sense. When I was younger, me and my kind of friends were all kind of into, you know, again under this metal umbrella, but each of us kind of liked a different subgenre. I like more traditional metal, shall we say. I like things like Manowar, Armored Saint, Sabotage, this kind of thing. Gore, that kind of like, you know, fairly heavy, but not kind of going into the real heavy stuff sort of side. But one of my best friend at the time was into like thrash music and speed metal. Another one of my friends was into glam rock. Another was into kind of like Brit rock. But we were all just friends. There was none of this kind of like, I know that there's sometimes this like rivalry, shall we say, between certain subgenres of the metal umbrella, but that just wasn't the case. You know, we'd all enjoy each other's stuff. You know, we each had our kind of favourite type of subgenre, so to speak. But we would go to go to gigs and stuff with things that we weren't necessarily our first choice, and still have a good time and everything. Maybe it's different in the UK, certainly in that time of the year, in that time of the decade and everything. Anyway, what is your favourite non-metal band that I enjoy listening to? I actually listen to a lot of non-metal, to be honest with you. I'm not particularly kind of stuck in one genre. Metal was kind of like, when I was younger, it was a thing more or less I was interested in. But I always liked Duran Duran. Even back then, I kind of liked them, and I still like them to this day. But there's plenty of more modern stuff that I'm into. More recently, I've got into things like dubstep, like Skrillex and stuff. So there's quite a few. How many metal band t-shirts do I own? 0. Again, the contrarian. I don't actually like them, and I never really was that fussed, even back in the kind of the heyday. So a couple of things. When I was back in the kind of like the 80s and early 90s, when I was kind of in the you know, the kind of the heat of the metal movement, so to speak, I actually preferred to wear shirts. I never really tended to follow the fashion, so to speak, of kind of rock and metal stuff. It just didn't appeal to me. I had a few metal t-shirts, but I had probably no more than 5 or 6. because I actually prefer to wear shirts. And even now, I actually find just the generic crew neck t-shirt incredibly boring. I prefer a V-neck, and I preferred it fitted, and you don't really get the kind of like the printed stuff. And I just find, you know, them knocking out the boring crew neck t-shirts with just different print incredibly lazy. So I actually don't really wear that sort of thing even now, and I never really did that much. Like I said, there's a few. I think I had about 5 or 6 metal t-shirts, but I prefer to wear shirts. Is your significant other a metalhead? Well, there is no really significant other currently, so that would be a no. But at the time, obviously, again, in the kind of the height of my metal fandom, I was seeing someone pretty much for the entire time I had kind of long hair, for the most part, and she was a kind of a rock chick, for lack of a better word. You know, he went to various gigs. In fact, he went to, we saw Warrior Soul, who was my girlfriend's favourite band at the time, and Corey Clark, who was a singer, tried to get in there. So, you know, there you go. And if I could bring back one metal musician, who would it be? So this one would be Chris Oliver, the band Savatage. Now, he died in a car accident due to a drink driver, and he was a fantastic guitarist. And it was the same month that Kurt Cobain killed himself. And it really irritated me, because to me, the rise of grunge music kind of spelled the end of traditional metal at the time. That's how I felt about it. I didn't mind some Nirvana stuff. To me, it was kind of that's what like Kerrang used to cover back then. It was like you moved away from your more sort of power metal and thrash, and was really covering a lot of grunge at the time. And like all the kind of the metal mags really didn't cover that much actual kind of what I would consider traditional heavy metal. And to me, I thought that Chris Oliver was massively more talented than Kurt Cobain, and I actually thought his passing was actually more tragic because he didn't choose it. He was a victim of a drink driver, and I remember it really irritated me because I bought the issue of Kerrang, and it was pages and pages and pages about Kurt Cobain killing himself, and then there was this little paragraph about Chris Oliver in this kind of crash that killed him, and it really bothered me because it just showed that, you know, back in the day when I was into the sort of the rock scene and the heavy metal scene, it was like, oh, you know, it's all against, you know, down with kind of mainstream music and fashion and everything. But then I realised it's just the same. It's just the same, but for a more of a specific audience. Like the magazines are still following trends, but they're just doing it in this specific genre. There's no difference to, you know, kind of back then I used to be like, oh, I don't like mainstream kind of stuff, but then I realised it's the same motor running this kind of this industry, so to speak, but just in a kind of a smaller microcosm on itself. Bit of a rant there. Anyway, so that to me was the he was a far more of a tragic passing, because I thought he was more talented, and his actual passing was, you know, it wasn't his choice. So that'd be my answer to that one. So there you go, some long-winded some answers there. So thank you to Horrormetal for doing this tag. I thought it was quite fun, and obviously the originator as well. Now, I don't really talk about these, so I don't know who to tag in this this particular tag, because I really don't know who is interested in heavy metal and who is not. So with that respect, I will leave this tag open to anyone who is interested in, you know, heavy metal music and stuff. If you want to do the tag, obviously feel free, and I'll be interested to hear some responses. And yeah, thanks for watching, and now back to regular programming. Bye for now.